The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. Lovin' baseball when we were 12 and innocent. I'm Ralph Tycho, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I talk to the most interesting people on the planet, and today is no exception. My mentor in radio, Mr. Fred Wallin. How are you?
Okay. It's very hot here in Southern California. It never rains, and we can only water our grass once a week. So the green grass is now all brown, but I guess if you're very, very rich in this area, you don't care how much it costs. You just keep watering. So things are not necessarily fair.
Yes, in life, and that's just a small analogy. Life is not fair, and you can mix it up any way you want, but it's random. The good don't necessarily get rewarded, and the bad do oft times, politically and in business and everything else. So let's talk some nostalgia. Picture yourself, you're age 12, you're a baseball fan, and intellect has met enthusiasm. It should be one of the best times of your life. Fred, what was it like for you baseball-wise?
No, it was fine. I played Little League. I was playing softball at the park. I was pretty good at it until I hurt my arm. I was a third baseman, shortstop, and center fielder, depending on the team and the age, and I played with bigger guys. I actually was a pretty good player, and I think I would have had a shot in college or something, but I hurt my arm. But, yeah, it was a fine time, and I had three younger brothers who also played sports, and it was quite a place, Culver City, California. And let me just say something. We were very lucky, Ralph. Culver City had a man named Sid Cronenthal who had built 9 parks in Culver City, and we'd play against each other. Like right after school, you'd go to the park, and then you'd play with your guys at the park, and then once a week you travel to another playground or a park, and very few cities had something like that. So it was like we had championships in yo-yo and checkers and chess and dominoes. That was going off too. But as far as baseball, basketball, football, honestly, we played against the other parks. It was a wonderful time in Culver City, California, where they made the movies and they treated the kids nicely, I got to tell you.
Wow. So I can say for a kid to have exposure to whatever it is he or she is passionate about is a tremendous advantage in life. So I'll ask you, getting off the subject, if it weren't for baseball and sports, what would be your passion?
Politics. My mom was very, very political. My dad wasn't at all, but my mom was very political, and she, as a little kid, she in fact took me to the sports arena when the Democratic Convention for John F. Kennedy was going on in 1960. So I got involved very, very young. We discussed politics at a very, very young age, and obviously I've lived a few years since then and have never forgotten what my mom told me.
What were some of the lessons that she did teach you?
I'm sorry?
What were some of the lessons that she did teach you?
Oh, it was just when I was about 8 years old, we were at the Mayfair Market in Culver City, and there was an African American or black guy behind the register, and the man in front of us started screaming at him. And he called him some names, I think the N-word. And my mother just intervened, and she said, "Get me that manager." And she started screaming at the guy. And, I'd never seen her like that. And she was not, necessarily calm all the time, but I'd never seen anything like that. So we're out of the market, and I said to her, what was going on there? And she said, "Did you hear what he called the guy behind the register?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, let me just tell you something." And I'm a non-religious Jew, so I need to tell you that. So she said, "Believe me, the same guy who's screaming the N-word is screaming the anti-Jewish word." She used another word that I knew, and so it's something I've never forgotten. And so politically, I've always been on that side because I've always believed that to this very day.
There is always a group of people who are made scapegoats for other groups' insecurity, and be it jobs or whatever, the Chinese who came over here, the Irish who came over here, but none, given the color of their skin and the way they were brought over originally, they didn't choose to come here, none suffered historically as much as the Jews and the blacks.
Right.
So we have an affinity for one another that has been tainted over the years, and that's another podcast in itself. But I'll give you an example, sports-wise. I did a podcast with Sam Stith, who is former St. Bonaventure brother of Tom Stith, best known for that. But Sam played with the Knicks for a little while, grew up in Harlem. We had some experiences together. I have an affinity for this guy that's beyond belief because of our equal struggles in life, just as I do with you, because I know what it is to be a non-religious Jew and take that word that you can't say on the, or you think you can't say on the podcast. So I appreciate having you as a friend, let alone a guest.
He had an advantage, though, over the African Americans or blacks, in that nobody knows I'm Jewish or was born Jewish. Most people thought when I was growing up I was Italian. The name Wallin is not a Jewish name. Of course, originally it was Walensky or something way back with my great-grandfather. But I'm just saying that we have an advantage. The black, is black.
Of course, yeah.
They've got it worse. I mean, somebody might not like Jews, but if I go into a market, they don't know I'm Jewish. But if you're black and they don't like blacks, they know you're black. So, it's harder on them because basically we've got a shield in that most of us are Caucasian. And not all of us, but most of us are Caucasian. So from that aspect, we've got to protect the African Americans because they don't have it as easy as even we do.
Absolutely. Fred, getting back to baseball, how about on an organized level, who took you to Dodger Stadium for the first time?
Roy Campanella. My dad took me 93,103 people honoring Roy Campanella. Of course, he had the traffic accident in late '57, and he never could play again. And Dodgers came here in '58, and they had a Roy Campanella night with the Yankees in March of 1959. And we battled traffic, and from Culver City to the Coliseum at that point. It wasn't that long, but it took an hour or so. But my dad wanted to go. My dad was a Chicagoite. He was a Cubs fan until the Dodgers signed Jackie, and then he switched to the Dodgers. But he wasn't very political, but my mom was, so I think she pushed him to take me there in honor of Roy Campanella.
Wow. I'm an ex-New York Giants fan, and I hated Walter O'Malley because as a kid you're taught to think that he was the one that took not only the Dodgers away, but the Giants.
Yeah.
And that wasn't true. The Giants were going one way or the other. But my point is, he did take the Dodgers away from Brooklyn, and he was hated. That night, he donated the proceeds of a sellout crowd at the Coliseum. There must have been, how many, 93,000 people, some odd, there. And he just, if not eliminated my thinking about the man, it just tempered it a little bit with his humanity, because he didn't have to do that. Campy had never played a day in Los Angeles. He was in the accident in the winter of 1957, and never was in Los Angeles in a baseball capacity. So what he did was magnanimous, and just showed me a lot as a human.
Well, I didn't know Walter, but Peter O'Malley is not your typical businessman. When I was doing Dodger Talk in the late 80s, Dodgers, from Dodgers, and I was pretty objective. And I said things like, Steve Sachs obviously has got some problems throwing to first base, and other things like that. And a couple of the Dodgers actually tried to get me fired. And so we met in the dugout. It was Mike Marshall, the outfielder, and Steve Sachs, and Mike Scioscia was the captain. And they tried to get me fired. And so I eventually met with Peter and Fred Clare and Peter O'Malley, and they were in the room, said, listen, and this is not an egotistical thing, but I'm just telling you from Peter's perspective, Fred's the best Dodger Talk guy we've ever had. He's objective. I know he loves the Dodgers. You guys get back to the field and leave him alone. So that's something I've never forgotten, and every year he sends me a Christmas card.
Wow. I got to know him a little bit when I was doing Topps baseball cards representation on the West Coast. And he and I would chat in Bakersfield. And he was one of those guys who could watch baseball all day at whatever level and get something out of it and enjoy it. He was a good guy, or is a good guy. You're still
the team in '98, and no matter what you're seeing with the Dodgers now, things were better with Peter O'Malley. We might not have won as much, but he just had a different type of organization. And of course, his nephews basically have control and running the San Diego Padres, the Seidlers.
Oh, I did not know that. What a big Dodger Padre connect over the years. Al Campanis was with both. Few other names that Buzzy Bavasi had a history with both the Dodgers, of course, but with San Diego. And that was an interesting saga in Bavasi's life. Can you tell me something about that?
Well, I mean, as the Dodgers, yes. As the Padres, really, no, not much. I do remember that this is interesting from my perspective, anyways. Johnny Padres, first year the Padres were in existence, '69, I believe, and he was pitching against the Dodgers, and Vin Scully was doing the play-by-play, of course, and he said, like the first four innings, Padres had given up only one hit, and he says it's astounding because the Johnny against former teammates, this and that. He was all said something that, like, obviously he knows baseball as well. He knew baseball as well as anybody, but he wasn't throwing that hard, and it's got to be my witness. Like the fifth or sixth inning, the Dodger just clobbered him. So, and in fact, I turned to the Padres station because my favorite Dodger of all time, Duke Snider, was doing color, and I quickly turned to the Dodger station, to the Padres station, when Duke was doing color for them, and I just got a kick listening from their perspective too. So, and again, from people living in Los Angeles, when the Padres came into existence, what it meant was, before that, the only games we got locally, other than the national games, were 11 games from San Francisco. Okay, so now the Padres come into existence, and you're only meeting them 9 times on the road, and you're only meeting the Giants 9 times on the road. But we got 18 games instead of 11, and that was a big deal in the late 60s and 70s because, as you know, Ralph, TV was not a thing like it is today.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the creator of what they call pay TV back then was Walter O'Malley, or the Dodgers themselves. But yeah, today it's cable and satellite and this, that, and the other thing.
We didn't have much of LA didn't have cable to the early 80s. There was parts of it in Santa Monica and West LA that did, but much of Los Angeles didn't. But as you said, in the mid 70s, for a year or two, my dad had a friend who lived in Cheviot Hills, which is like an upper class area, and there was a pay-per-view type thing. It wasn't on TV, and it wasn't Select TV where I used to work later, but there was a thing where he had a little box, and he could get the Dodger home games. And that was like beginning here in Southern California of pay-per-view. I don't think he paid per game. I think he paid per month. But he got most of the home games from Dodger Stadium. So, yeah, you're right. The O'Malleys were innovators from that perspective, certainly.
Well, how I could do a podcast. We could do a series of podcasts on owners and where they were successful beyond what the teams that they owned. And, the Wrigleys come to mind, Bush comes to mind. A book can be written, as books have a habit of getting written when there's a certain curiosity there. So maybe we'll save that for another podcast. Hey, Fred, terrific. I just want you to end in the theme. How did you lose your baseball innocence?
How did I lose my? I don't think. I'm not sure I ever was totally innocent. Because again, my mom was so political that a lot of the things that I'd watch, I would question. But let me just tell you this, and from a positive perspective. Honestly, the first game I remember watching, it was like in the mid-50s. I was like 5 years old, and the Dodgers were playing, and my dad points to the TV set, and he says, "That's the best player in baseball." And I swear to you, Ralph, Duke Snider had a home run on the next pitch. So that's why in our radio room here, I've got pictures of the Duke, and he was always my favorite Dodger, and Sandy Koufax was my second. But I don't think I was ever totally oblivious to the politics of baseball because, again, I was so political at such a young age that I would think twice about anything and everything. And that was just me. It's always been that way. And, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure that was as much fun as if I wasn't so politically conscious, because I think you have more fun as a kid just not knowing things or not presuming things or wondering about things and just enjoying the games as they are.
Blissful innocence. Tell me something about Vin Scully, God rest his soul, just passed away recently since you and I have talked. Give me some impressions, some thoughts, some memories about Vin.
Well, I would just say hi to him, in the press box, and he'd always say hi, he'd remember my name. But the first spring training game, '87, Vero Beach, that I was doing the post-game show, Vinny, of course, did the play-by-play, and then he gets up, and I was sitting in his seat. I moved into his seat, and there was like a 3 or 4 minute break, of course, after the game until they went to the post-game show. And I swear to you, Ralph, I can remember a lot of things in most shows that I did, but I'm saying to myself during that break, I'm sitting in Vin Scully's seat. This can't be. And I don't remember, honestly, somebody from the station called me after the show and said, "Hey, good job, Fred." And Ralph, I'm telling you, I don't remember one thing I said. I don't know how I got through the game. I don't know how I got through the hour show. I have no conception of what I said or anybody who called up what they asked. I was like in another world, and apparently I was talking, but I don't remember what I said. But if you ask me a situation, even the Kirk Gibson thing in '88, I can remember what I said, and that we had 5 hours of a post-game show. But Vin Scully was just Vin Scully. And got to think about this, too. That was '87, so it was like 27 years after he started, and he already was a legend. Now, that's '87 to '16, so that's another 29 years of being even more of a legend. I can't, just add those years up. It's unbelievable. He was a legend by the '70s here in Southern California, and he did it for another 45 years. So it was like astounding what he was and what he meant to Southern California. And just a few weeks ago when he passed, and I was watching, I get the Major League Baseball thing on DirecTV, so I was watching another game, and one of the announcers says, "Oh my God, Vin Scully has passed away," and it was like, "Oh my God!" So I quickly turned to the Dodger game and hear what they were saying. But he was, you can't top what everybody else has been saying about him. It's all true. He is. I don't look at. I liked your New York announcers. I interviewed Mel Allen many times, or a few times. I interviewed, and I really liked Jack Buck. But then Vin Scully was just simply in another class of individual, and I don't know if ever there's going to be another Vin Scully, because is anybody going to work from 50 to 16? 67 years? I don't think.
And not just those years, but the eras that he started, like in the 50s, when announcing in a city where it was almost a birthright to have the World Series played. Wow. And to be mentored by Red Barber, for crying out loud.
I'll never forget, in 1959, as a little kid, I came home from school, and they beat the Braves, and Vin Scully said, just as the final out was made, he says, "And we go to Chicago against the White Sox." And there was something as a little kid that, you just never have forgotten.
You were the champions. And there's no replacing or substituting being champions and winning, because it's the basic tenet of it. It's a win-loss atmosphere. And winning is always better than losing.
But something that I don't think people, I don't know if they comprehend or they don't think about it. When we were growing up, there were 8 teams in each league. If you won your league, you had a 50-50 shot, all things being equal, of winning the World Series. That was all there was. Okay. Then there were 4 teams in the playoffs. Now what do we have, 12 or 14? I'm totally confused here. It's harder to win a championship now because the Dodgers of this year are going to win their 105, 110 games. Fine. That doesn't mean in a short series they can't be swept. So it's harder now to win a world championship than it ever was before, because they're trying to make as much money as they can, so they're adding teams every year to the playoffs to keep people involved through September and a chance to make the playoffs and the extra playoff games or whatever. But I think it's taking away something from who really is the best. Yankees, of course, now not playing well. Yankees, Mets, and Dodgers, maybe the Astros, are the four best teams in baseball, and there's no guarantee. And the Braves, I think you got to put the Braves.
Oh, the Braves are really tough. Those teams you mentioned are terrific, but it's a crapshoot when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, remember the Nationals in 2019? They were not the best team. They won it. They beat the Dodgers in the playoffs. They were not the best team. But in the playoffs, it's again a short series. You find out now that Buehler's out till 2024 for the Dodgers, or certainly till late next year, and he was their overpowering guy when he was healthy. He's not going to be there. Now you're up against the Mets or, Scherzer and DeGrom.
DeGrom? Yeah.
Or this kid on the Braves, Strider is unbelievable. I play fantasy baseball. You have to play Spencer Strider every time he pitches because he goes 6 innings, strikes out 9 to 11 to 12 every single game. He's unbelievable. And I'm looking at the screen as we do this. It's Atlanta 14, Pittsburgh nothing in the 9th inning.
Today. Is that what you're saying?
There's on Wednesday.
As a Met fan, that doesn't thrill me. That's my conservative reaction without using the F-bomb on the radio. Keep coming back, Fred. I appreciate you being here, and I always enjoy escaping the real world and talking ball to you, with you.
Stay well, and we shall talk soon.
Okay. Thank you for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tycho, the weak link of it all. Adios and happy trails.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.